Teachers, counselors of Reddit, what's the worst case of helicopter parenting you've ever encountered? I've had parents who wanted to come to school and attend all of the classes with their kid. My sister-in-law had to stop putting stickers on her third graders' papers because parents were upset that some were better than others. That is, one student received a great job for earning a 98, while another student only received a good job for earning a 90, and that implied that a 90 was not great. The kids didn't care at all. The parents were crazy. Told a lady at work about an interesting app that allows you to lock your child's phone anytime you want, and the only option it gives them is to call the preset parents number. The lady who designed it was mad because she would call or text her children and they wouldn't answer, so it allowed her to lock their phones until they called and checked in. My co-worker immediately downloaded the app, and now if she calls or texts her kids and they don't respond within 2 minutes, she locks their phones. If her kids are on Reddit and see this, I would like to apologize. I just thought the article was interesting and was making small talk. I did not intend to ruin your teenage years. Time to get an older, not so smart phone. I worked as a college ambassador during undergrad. Part of this meant I ended up at events with prospective students and their families to tell them about all of the great things we did. This was a fancy one where there was dinner served and we were each assigned to a different table with 2-3 families. I always try to talk to the kids and try to connect with them. But this kid, we'll call him Brad, was the hardest case I've ever had. Every time I would talk to him, he would make eye contact with me, then look at his mom. She would answer every question I could ask. What's your favorite class? What are you looking forward to the most? All were answered by mom. Then of course, because Brad wasn't asking me any questions, she decided to start asking me questions about my college experience. This is when she told me of his life plans. He, too, was going to be a resident advisor in college. And he was going to graduate in 3 years so he could go to med school at Harvard. And he was going to get married to high school girlfriend's name before med school started. You could see the kid just try to shrink away. When I was a student, I would hear of parents accompanying their adult children to job interviews. No one will hire anyone who brings mommy or daddy with them. No one. Not a teacher, but I'm a nanny. I briefly worked for one mom who still wiped her 8-year-old son's butt after he took a crap. That poor kid would just sit on the toilet waiting for mom to come clean his poop hole. I didn't stick around that family for very long. I used to teach at a private primary school in China, basically for rich kids. Many of the children have no brothers or sisters and suffer from little emperor syndrome. One little girl was very bossy. At home, she had servants and was used to ordering others around, even adults. To give you some perspective, I've seen kindy kids hit and kick their minders while the minders grin frightenedly. If that kid complains to mommy, they are out of a job. So at school she tried to give orders to the other little girls and boys. As you can imagine, this did not go down very well with the other kids, especially as they themselves were all quite well off. So her entire class refused to play or talk with her. This caused the little girl to cry and complain to mommy. Her mommy marched into our office and in front of our principal threatened to have the other children killed unless they started playing with her daughter. The principal was shocked. He was the one who informed me. Another mother asked me how dare I give her son 63% on an exam. As I was still new to China at the time, I just looked at her puzzledly as I couldn't understand how daring came into it. I thought you just gave people what they got. I was teaching a general chemistry lab in college and a parent emailed me after the first lab report with an annotated copy of the graded assignment, which I gave a B+. Little Johnny had never gotten a B in a class before and I was just being unfair since it was his first semester in college. Long story short, she threatened to go to the prof. I said go ahead, and they did. The professor was awesome. When kids be about their grades, he offers them a regrade, and then goes over the report with a fine-toothed comb. The B+ got changed to a C. Engineering student here. There was this guy in my class, the only son child to rich parents, overprotective mom. He always came in and sat on the first bench in the lectures. One day some kids occupied the first bench unknowingly and he was forced to sit on second bench. Gets his mom to college next day. Mom raises the roof and escalated this to the dean. This happened in the first year. Goes without saying the guy didn't have very peaceful next 3 years. His classmates and teachers ensured that. I fortunately have yet to experience any helicopter parents, but my dad saw a pretty good one when he was teaching 2nd grade. There was this one mom who was, I guess, what you could call a bit of a local celebrity in our small town, and she was a bit, success driven and competitive at times. She was nice enough and was always volunteering to help out in the classroom, but during one of the class parties, she organized a game of musical chairs. Thing is, she tried to fix it so her daughter would win. She tried to be as discreet as she could, but it didn't exactly work out. My dad and the kids caught on pretty quick and the kids openly called her out on it. She tried to deny it, but everyone saw right through her. She cared so much about winning that she would rig a game of musical chairs for a group of 2nd graders. I've taught middle school through college. I had one parent of a high school student who said she could not come to a particular meeting time because she'd be in class. Oh, what degree are you studying for? None. I take the same classes as her other child, so I can make sure she works hard. Apparently she was registering as a student in all of her child's classes, going to the classes, all to make sure her child did her college work. I didn't say anything, but I would not have wanted to be that professor, or the kid. I was a resident assistant for my university and we had some major helicopter parents during move-in day the last few years. It was either last year or the year before. This guy's mom helped him move into his dorm room when it came time for the parents to leave, and for the first floor meeting his mom hid in his bathroom. Then she tried to stay the night that night. Only reason she was caught was because the guy's roommate came to me and the other eye on the floor and told us he wasn't comfortable with her being there. She yelled at us when we asked her to leave and we had to call campus police to escort her out of the building. Had a kid's parents try to go to their college orientation for them. Real helicopter parents get into positions of power where they can directly influence their kids' lives. My mom got a place on the board of my sister's small, private high school and managed to put a 2nd family member on the board as well. This gave her a lot of sway in hiring and firing teachers. One teacher was fired for, among other things, using big words like pedagogical at school board meetings. Who even knows what that means? I'm right. All the teachers would tell my mom how great her daughter was. Great kid, always improving. Fast forward to college. My sister had a failing average each semester for 3 semesters. She nearly got expelled for copy-pasting a Wikipedia entry on an exam, then denying it. She even managed to fail her phys ed class, where the mark was based on attendance. My parents elected not to send her back for a 4th semester. How could such a thing happen? How could a great high school student do so poorly in college? It turns out that, quite understandably, none of the high school teachers wanted to risk their jobs to tell my mom that her kid probably had a serious learning disability. This, despite the fact that my sister's disability was obvious to anyone who tried to help her with her homework for more than 5 minutes. After a bad semester in college, my sister was finally diagnosed with a learning disability, though the help couldn't come fast enough for her to turn her college career around. Had it not been for my mom's hovering in high school, the teachers might have been straight with my parents and, maybe, my sister would have gotten help earlier. I didn't have to deal with any parents when I taught undergrad, luckily. My uncle, on the other hand, is a professor at Georgia Tech and once had to terminate a doctoral student from the program for not following the dissertation timeline. After throwing a tantrum himself, the student called his mommy and she came in and ranted at my uncle until they had to be escorted out of his office. The joys of teaching adults. I'm a high school English teacher. One of my students had an IEP, rarely showed up to class, and when he did he never did his work, no matter what I tried to do to keep him on track. I even hand-delivered his work to his resource teacher, by his mom's request, because as a 16-year-old he wasn't responsible enough to keep track of papers, and he refused to do it there. His mother visited my class every week to complain to me and ask why he was failing. She insisted that because he had an IEP, he wasn't allowed to fail my class. At the end of the semester, the student was suspended for 10 days for fighting. I sent home makeup work with him. He never returned in and he failed my class. Mum got mad and went to the administration demanding he be able to do the makeup work, but that I had to give him the work again because he'd lost it. I never got the work, but the mom did confront me in the parking lot. getting in my face and yelling at me for failing her son. I told her I may have given him a failing grade, but she had failed him by babying him his entire life, and as a result he had failed himself. I heard a story once from a doctor that stuck with me. One particularly bad bubble wrap parent was always at her kid's side making sure he was safe. The kid never learned his limitations. He would try jump off high things etc, and the mom was always there to stop him or catch him. First day of school the kid jumps off the top of the play structure and breaks his arm. When the mother was at the doctor with the kid she said he broke his arm because I wasn't there. The doctor replied, no, he broke his arm because you always were. A student of another colleague. We were sitting around marking papers when he bursts into hysterical laughter. Colleague 1. Can anyone make sense of this sentence? It's not even a thing. This is an anti-thing. He reads it to us. It's half a rant, half 8th grader gibberish. Colleague 2. Oh my god, I just read that exact same thing. She flipped through a stack of papers and pulled it out, compared, and it's basically the exact same paper by the same student submitted to 2 separate classes. Totally counts as academic dishonesty and that's explicit in the outline. It has to be original work for the class. The 2 of them take the papers to their professors. They agree. It goes straight to the department head as a case of plagiarism. Student is completely livid. He's clearly a genius. Everyone else is a moron for even questioning his work. And he'll have our heads and our jobs for this. He schedules a meeting with the department head, like he's supposed to, and the day finally comes. In this mug, chubby little sucker struts, fully suited up, and right behind him is Uncle Sleazy Lawyer, complete with matching suit and briefcase to boot. We can hear the student muttering as he stomps down the hallway about how he's going to be a great legal mind one day because his uncle told him so and he was totally going to show us all. It was all I could do not to laugh. They go into the office, close the door, and Uncle Lawyer loudly declares for all to hear, my client has prepared a statement before we begin. Department head, number, student, but it's my department head, number, student, but, department head, number. We couldn't hear anything after that. We had to close our own door so we could laugh. He was disciplined appropriately, though. All the professors knew who that student was from that point on. I was in 8th grade and my teacher was always an butthole to me. He would send me out of class because I was 3 minutes late, or not accept my math homework because I didn't work out the problems the way he wanted me to. So near the end of the year he assigned a essay to us. The subject was on any president of our choosing. I wrote my essay in about 3 hours and followed the rubric very closely. I print out my paper and leave it on my desk so I won't forget it. Before I go to sleep my mom asked me if she could borrow the laptop. So I set up the laptop for her and go to sleep. Next day turn in the essay. Next week get back the essay with a D on it. I notice a bunch of red marks on it. Read through essay and found out my mom went and wrote more to it and switched out my essay. Explained to the teacher what happened, and by the grace of God he let me turn in mine. Come back next day with my essay. Get B+ on it. She never tried again. I'm not a teacher, but I have a story that is relevant. When I was in high school there was this kid's mom would sit in on all his classes to make sure he would do his homework. He didn't have any mental problems or anything. She wouldn't let him talk to anyone who didn't go to their church. She argued with the teacher every freaking day. In biology she reported the teacher to the superintendent for teaching evolution. As you probably guessed, nobody hid their dislike of her. The best one was when I missed a test one day and had to stay after school to make it up. She burst into the room looking furious and started yelling at the teacher because he failed her son. The teacher just started going she just got madder and madder. The teacher just kept ignoring her. At one point he took out his cell phone and called some people. The woman got really mad and stormed off. Back when I was teaching I gave a bad grade on a test to a 55-year-old woman who was taking the class. Her 80-year-old mother came to my office the next day with scones and tea to ask me if her daughter could retake the test. I allowed it. Imagine what would happen had you turned away the mother. You would get visited by a 105-year-old woman. currently a teacher, but my story comes from my days as a college student. My university offered a day-long parent orientation as an option for parents while their kids were attending their own 2-day student orientation session. The summer before my senior year, I was hired as a student employee for this parent orientation session. Steady hours, good pay, etc. A pretty nice summer gig for a poor college student. Anyway, we met a wide range of parents at the registration table. Some of the parents were obviously not too worried. Is local bar still open? I'd love to duck out and get some nostalgia beers. Others were clearly interested, without being too overbearing. I've got a few questions about class registration. Can you point me in the right direction? But the parent that I'll always remember. Wow. Part of the script we were supposed to go over involved asking parents if they would be interested in taking a tour of their student's future dormitory. When I got to this part of the script with one mom, she completely broke down, started bawling and crying about how she wasn't ready for her little angel to go off to college. This went on for several minutes and bordered on a full-on tantrum. Mind you, this wasn't on move-in day. This was at an orientation 2 freaking months before school actually started. I shudder to think how the actual move-in day went for that family. Worked at a sleepaway camp. Asian mother told us to weigh both of her children and mail her the results twice daily. That's oddly specific. In high school I became really good friends with this kid named Dan. Dan and I hung out a ton, and one weekend I invited him over for a sleepover. Stay up late, watch TV and play video games. I had to meet his mother and his father to gain approval. It was like going through a job interview. Had to tell them where I wanted to go to college, my life's goals, etc. Got the approval and Dan was allowed to sleep over my house. The morning after the night of the sleepover, my mom gets a call at 6 AM. "Hi, this is Dan's mom. Are you watching your child and my boy?" My mom quickly gets over the shock and replies, "Yes, they are downstairs in the basement and they're fine. We have a finished room where we would always hang out." "Well, I would appreciate you checking on them because I haven't heard from Dan all night." My mom woke us up and Dan realized he left his cell phone upstairs. He goes to get it and it turns out he has 63 missed calls, 105 missed text messages, and 20 voicemails. He started to cry and my mom just hugged him and said it's okay and made us breakfast. My parents are helicopter parents. My stepmom was insane while the 6 of us kids were in school. She had access to every assignment, due date it was turned in, and grade we received. My teachers hated her. She would call about grades lower than a B. Once I ordered a Letterman jacket and when I was told the price I called my stepmom and she demanded to speak to the people selling them and told them we were poor but deserved the same privileges as everyone else. On speaker, it was so embarrassing. I was on reduced lunch and one day I couldn't eat because my money ran out. Guess what happened? Q2 crying lunch ladies and a burnt grilled cheese. I felt so bad. My dad would go to every meet the teacher night and insult the level of intelligence of every math teacher. He demanded I go to tutoring and he called my teachers to make sure I was there every morning. He even made me get their signature to prove I was there. He went with me to my community college orientation and followed me from class to class, making sure he knew where each one was, and he got the phone numbers and emails from all my professors. Growing up with them was a nightmare. He would yell and shout and throw fits like a toddler, and my teachers would always feel sorry for me because that's what I went home to. Eventually, after my dad demanded I pay rent while working 3 jobs and going to college full time, I got kicked out because I got a tattoo. I was 19, met a guy and moved in with him. That really pissed off my parents, and now we are happily married. Our 1-year wedding anniversary is tomorrow. Yay, overbearing parents. You have been visited by the paparazzi dog. Comment the perfect framing so that a paparazzi never pursues you. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.